17th edition of the Montreal International Black Film Festival, founded by the Fabienne Collat Foundation, presented by Québécois and co-presented by Desjardins. The festival runs from September 22nd to October 3rd, 2021. The festival is a fantastic festival where you can discover the program and grab all your access passes and tickets on montrealblackfilm.com. Thank you all for joining us. I am thrilled to be hosting the interview today. My name is Anik Mattern. I am a professional actor, an actor trainer, and an acting coach, and I have been for over 35 years. In my former company, Dynamic Theatre Factory, I was garnered a ACTRA Community Builder Award for all the youth that were already working in the business in Canada and in Hollywood. And then I opened and am the founder of Impro Gym here in Montreal, where I use instinct training with actors through meditation and improvisation and scene work and on-camera work. That is for professional union actors, and there's a group of non-professional union professional aspiring actors as well, once a week. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ganaya Geha Nation, recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Johe Joge, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. Our panel discussion today is Landing the Role. I am extremely honored to introduce a very valuable industry member for today's discussion, Miss Tonya Williams. Emmy-nominated Tonya Williams' accomplishments left my head and heart spinning. She is a famous actor, producer, writer, and advocate. She's also the founder and executive director of Reelworld Film Festival and AccessReelworld.ca and the Reelworld Foundation, now in its 21st year, which is North America's largest recruiting database for racially diverse talent in Canada, exclusively for Canadians. Through these organizations, she's been able to advocate and create more access and inclusion for Canadian, Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the screen-based production industries. Tonya, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
My first question for you is related to, of course, your career. So please let us know how you started your acting career.
You know, I think most actors, there's not a moment where you go, oh, this is when this started. So for me, though, when I was even 3 and 4 and 5, I did a lot of ballet, and that led to, you know, little ballet recitals when you're like a little kid. And I did ballet up till the age of 18. And then I also played piano. So I had a lot of piano recitals. But none of these things were things that were done with the hopes that I was going to be a performer or be on stage. It was just extracurricular that most parents, and both my parents were Jamaican, are Jamaican. And these were just the ways that you opened your child to the arts and to all kinds of experiences. And then I think it was around 16 or 17, there was a modeling course that my mother asked me if I'd like to do. And by then, I would have thought that music, classical music, was the direction my life was going to take, by the way, because I was playing not only piano, but tenor sax and violin and oboe. And I thought my dream would have been to play in an orchestra at that time. And I represented my high school at the Ontario Music Leadership Camp. So music was really my first love. And my mother had signed me up for this modeling course for fun, really for me to learn how to do your makeup properly, do your hair properly, you know, like walk properly. It was her version of finishing school, I think. But after I did the course, the woman who ran the agency and that had the course had asked if she could send me out on some commercials. This was around 1976, 77, and it was just the beginning of the industry thinking about being more inclusive. They were just thinking about it. It hadn't actually happened yet. And so my mother said it, was fine as long as it didn't interfere with my schooling or the other aspirations that I had. And so that was really the beginning for me, going on a few, the first 3 commercials I did ended up being national spots. So I did a Wear a Mustache Milk commercial, and then I did a McDonald's commercial, and then I did a Bank of Nova Scotia commercial. And those 3 kind of just catapulted me very quickly into the public eye. And from there, after high school, because now I started doing very small parts, I still didn't think of this as a career, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was doing these things, but I thought, this was fun until I had actually applied to York University for the music program. And then at the last minute, I pulled out my application and decided to take a year off because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And in that year, I started to work more as an actor, and I was meeting professional actors, and they were talking about the schools they went to and the training they had. And I started to see acting in a very different light, in a very professional way. And after that year, I applied to Ryerson, the drama program, where you had to audition to get in. And I can't remember how many thousands of people audition every year, but 40 people got in, and I was one of them, the only Black person actually that was selected. And they tell you right away that halfway through the program, by Christmas, they would definitely eliminate 20 people. So while you're working at your craft, that 20 of you are going to go. And luckily I made it through that 20. And then that was sort of the beginning for me. It was very much a place of that I started to work first, then had an appreciation for acting, and then trained, so it was, however you get in the industry, there's no one road. There's no way that you can talk to 5 actors and they all have 5 very separate stories about how they entered the business. But that was certainly my way. But I can tell you, I fell in love with acting. I just love the exploration of character. I'm a really curious spirit. I love the way I always want to know. I want to know why people say the things that they say or why they react. Even as a little kid, my mother said I would just stare at people because I was always interested. What made someone become angry? Like what made them laugh at something? Those kind of reactions. I was always like on the outside looking in from a very critical standpoint. And I think I felt at home when I was studying acting, because that's all it really is. You're taking a character and you're totally trying to understand what drives that character, what makes them react the way that they react. And that's one of the things I love to tell people about acting. For me, acting is less about the words that you're saying. It really is 90% of me of acting is how you're responding to what someone is saying to you. That's what draws the audience in, from my perspective.
Absolutely. Very well said. Sometimes that's the hardest thing for an actor to do, is really listen.
It is, but most of if you look at the things when you're in class, almost everything is about listening. Almost all the things that your coach puts you through. One of my favorite training, I should say, is that 2 people are on stage and that your coach has told you each a subject matter that the other person doesn't know. And then you have to talk about your subject matter while listening to the other person. And when he says stop, you have to talk about what was the other person's subject matter, so that while you're talking, you can be listening at the same time.
Yes.
All that training is I just love it all. It's really like deep psychotherapy. That's what I think. Acting training is like deep psychotherapy, but in group form. And that journey is a very exciting one. It can be a difficult one too, because you're tapping into emotion. You're allowing yourself to be sort of vulnerable and open at all times. When one's instinct is always to sort of close, to protect. you know that chances are you're going to be rejected from the things that you do. So to leave yourself that raw and open and be rejected is really quite a dichotomy.
It's also amazing because it seems like you, as well as actors that really make a success of their career, work very well under pressure. Would you say that you work well under pressure?
That's interesting that you asked that because it doesn't feel like pressure.
Mm,
So I I think certainly all my years as a little kid, just performing in front of people, there was a level of comfort that I have already. There was I don't feel um, it doesn't feel like pressure to me because I don't feel I do well under pressure. So I think though that I'm kind of a really relaxed person to begin with. So even when people are like, oh, this thing is really, whatever's going on is really pressureful, I'm thinking it's not really pressureful. And I think it's because in any situation I'm in, I think of the worst possible outcome of the situation. And nothing has ever been as bad as that. So to me, my imagination is I've already set up this is the worst pressure of whatever the situation could be, and it's never that. So I'm kind of laid back after that. So if the plane is bumpy and my thoughts are we're going to go down and crash and die, then I'm thinking, well, we didn't crash and die, so I'm much more relaxed now from the sort of the whole thing. But I think I was watching this movie just yesterday, and it was the 7 Years of Tibet. It's a
yes.
really good movie, and it's just great
Jean-Jacques
to
Annaud,
rewatch
yes.
it. And the young kid playing the Dalai Lama is saying to the Brad Pitt character, why are you worrying? He says, if it's going to work out, then you really don't have to worry. And if it's not going to work out, you really don't have to worry. I mean, either way. So I do believe that we do contrive a lot of fear in ourselves, that if you stay present, which is what actors are supposed to do, if you stay as present as possible, there's really no fear in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't feel as stressful. But I do like to stand back, and I can see people freaking out. I do see people, things are going badly and everyone's freaking out. And I tend to it makes me really zen in a calm, kind of just like watching it outside of myself. It becomes almost comedic theater when everything's going wrong. And I find it amusing at that point.
Well, that's interesting. Then this leeways very well in the next question. So the question I have is about auditioning. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your process when, with your point of view and your psychology about self-awareness in the audition room. Like, how do you go about like really living the character without being too self-aware of the fact that it's an audition and there's, people just looking at you and you're not really in the room where your imagination is. And how do you deal with all that?
I'm glad you asked that question because I'm a terrible auditioner. So we'll start with there. I'm not a good auditioner at all. And I love listening to actors talk about their process and how they go in there. I'm so organic in my process, but I need to be in a situation that is somewhat real for my process to work, and nothing about the audition process is real for me.
Right.
So it is in my heyday when I had that kind of energy. First of all, I love when I'm working with an actor, as opposed to, it's not that casting directors aren't great too, but I need that. I need the close proximity. It's hard to create that intimacy across the room or when someone's standing just left or right of the camera. So the best auditions for me have been the ones where I ignore that there's a camera because the actor's like right beside me or, right there in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard for me to create and just manufacture some feeling, we'll call it true feeling, but when it's very technical. And these days you don't even get that. These days you're sent, you go to an audition place and there's just a camera guy and a camera, and you're in a tiny booth almost, and you're delivering these lines. So the process now is even, I found it difficult before, but now I just find it impossible. Like it's just so fake is the only word. It's so plastic that it's very hard for me to stay in it. But this is particular for younger actors, though. I definitely think that your stretch of the imagination needs to be, you need to expand that bubble, much more. And I think being able to rehearse with people, I think that's the hardest part for me. Is in theater school, you're always rehearsing with another actor something,
Very
and then you present it. There's a real isolated feeling about auditioning now. So you get someone emails you sides, and then you drive to some location where it's just some camera guy who could care less. He's just pushing play, and he's just, reading, yes, I love you. Yes, he's just reading whatever he needs to read. So I think as much as you can have friends or colleagues or people rehearse with you, that maybe you can take some of that in to the studio with you, because it's not like you can rely on friends or people to come with you every time there's an audition and sit across from you in these things. So it's very trying. I really hope that we evolve into a different way of choosing people for roles, because there are some people that are brilliant auditioners, by the way, who are not as good at delivering the role when it comes to the actual production. So I do believe this is an archaic way still for casting directors and producers and directors to find talent. Is this, I think there are better ways. To me, it would be better to just have a conversation, a Zoom conversation with someone, and ask them not so much about just saying these lines, but asking them questions around the circumstances, around the issues of the character, so that you really so that they can at least bring their intelligence to that conversation around that. To me, that would be a better way to see if you have the right person. Can they critically think about this character? Are they able to really get inside and understand the sort of the issues surrounding what the story is that they're a part of?
The circumstances, everything. It's so refreshing to hear you say that the audition is really tough. I'm sure a lot of actors will go, oh yes, hallelujah, I'm not alone. And she has so much experience, and yet she says this, it's so great. I think that one thing that we try to do as actors, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only thing we can do in an audition is really try to connect with the other person. Have, your reader's there. He may be terrible, but you still have to have some form of connection. And sometimes it's hit and miss, obviously.
Connection is vital. And I've done the exact same scene with one actor, and then a completely different actor has come in, and I've done that same scene. And for me, it feels completely different. And my responses are completely different, because I'm always going to play off what I get. There are some actors that they just prepare everything exact, and sort of no matter what they're getting, they're still delivering that exact. But it's not the way that works for me. The words really come out of the situation. It's not like so the situation has to feel really real. I remember doing this scene once, and the actress, her way of doing it was so over the top and really exaggerated, which made it all funny for me. So a truth for me was, as she was in her hysteria, I was laughing, because that's what I would do if anyone were that sort of hysterical or something. And they loved it in the scene, because originally when it was written, it was going to be these two people having an intense conversation. But really, I had to be, my character was too intelligent, too sophisticated to just fall into this person believed sort of the worst scenario of the situation. And my character wouldn't have believed sort of the worst scenario of that situation. So it really became And remember, I'll use the word intimacy a lot. That's all you're really creating. Intimacy is just that two people are really connecting, as you say, in this moment. And you can't always think that the moment must be dramatic, because sometimes comedies call for it to make it more dramatic in that moment. But yeah, it was, and if she was thrown by the comedy of me, then she should play that. By the way, like, it should make her more angry if she was upset over. So that's the fun of the work for me, that you don't know what the other actor is going to do. You shouldn't know what the other actor is going to do. But whatever it is, you should use it in the way that I think improv is great training. And I actually, right after drama school, I joined an improv group called the Guffaw Show. And we never knew what we were going to be doing. And we toured a little bit around Ontario. And at times there were literally less people in the audience than there were of us on stage. And we just, it didn't matter what happened as long as we responded and reacted and treated it like it was something. And we're not even pretending like it's something that's happening. It is something that's happening. Someone has just said that thing, or they're doing that thing. So it is actually happening. And there's no point in going, well, that's not the way we rehearsed it earlier, or that's not the way it should be. So I do think that's a part of my personality that I like. I like the unknown of something. So, I travel that way too. I love, pre-COVID, I love where I would just get on a plane to a place. I don't have anything set. I don't have a hotel picked out. I don't know exactly what I'm going to look at or what I'm going to do. But that's just so wonderful, to drop yourself into a place and then see if there's a rental car, and then just get in it and start down a road, but you don't know where the road really is going, and find things and experience things. I think that's just such a part of my nature, that's the part of acting that I really love.
That's quite amazing. And I totally connect with you on that. I'm so the same. I want to get into some questions about character work. But just before that, since we're on this topic of, I need things to be kind of coming at me and to live the moment, how did you survive staying interested and interesting for 22 years on The Young and the Restless as Dr. Winters?
It's so funny that people say that, but I've been asked that, but it's not, I think it's the same question that sometimes Broadway actors are asked, because they may be in the exact show for a year or longer and saying the exact lines, and yet they find something new in it every single night. So for me, it was easier because the character was getting older. The character had things happening. Character was single, then the character was married, then the character was a widow or divorced, then a character gets remarried, and like, things are actually happening to you. And so it's almost like in a movie, you have 90 minutes to delve into this character. And sometimes in a series or in a soap opera, you have years to develop this character. So I assume it's the same way as someone who's married to someone for 50 years, is that you're not just being married to someone like the same person that it was 50 years ago and you just stay with them for 50 years. It's that you're both evolving into very different people, and that you're learning from each other. So I learned so much from the character as the character was developing, and each experience was making her harder or softer or less compassionate or more compassionate. And that's how life just is. And then all the other characters that are her family or people that she just meets, they're all developing and evolving as well. So it's impacting sort of everything that is happening. And when the writing is good, that makes a difference too. So there was a time, especially when Bill Bell, the creator of the show, was the head writer, the scripts were so much richer. And once he was gone, I found it more difficult to find that richness. Sometimes once a lot of the studio heads and, sort of different people get in, they play for the the titillating part of the story. And Bill was not really that kind of a writer. So he was a writer that really, he wrote for the payoff to be 5 years down the road. And so you knew that all this was just fertile ground for this amazing payoff the audience was going to finally get. So you wanted to make it worth their while.
What a great experience.
Yeah, it was really a fantastic experience. And one that, I don't think you can recreate. And I think people who have been on long running shows that their characters and it was a successful, it's almost impossible to think about sort of recreating that again. Those are like trying to create Friends again or something. It was like those 6 people, in that time, in that moment, sort of created history, and you just don't try and recreate it. So there was a moment in Y&R where the key Black characters, which it was the Neil character and the Olivia and the Drusilla and the Malcolm, and for a while the Nathan character. We worked. It was such a great piecing that when some of us started to leave and they brought new characters on, it just didn't have the same feeling for me, So yeah, I think we're all lucky if you ever get that moment. There's just no point in saying, oh yeah, I'm going to try and create. Moments just happen. They're magical. You can do whatever you do, but you can't really control them. They're just pieces of magic that happen at certain times.
And that's so true. In our career is always full of these little magical moments, and it's being aware of it. And, when you get as old as some of us, we can look back and go, wow, that was quite amazing,
Yeah, I think I'm at that stage. It's, it's people think I don't want to act anymore. And it's not that. I definitely want to act. It's just that when I was younger, it was, any role that came along, that was decent, like didn't, require me to be the negative stereotype of what Black women were supposed to be in their eyes of the industry at that time. But any role that came along, I wanted to grab it and try it. But I feel I don't have that energy or that stamina anymore. And I feel like I'll read the whole script and then I'll read the character. And if it's not really saying something that is something I want to sort of share to the world, I don't feel like putting that much time and energy of my life into it. If it doesn't really stand for anything that is a belief or a value system. And this is one of the things that happens when you get older. You look around at the world and you just see there's just so much pain and anger and cruelty that you don't really feel like adding to that. I want to do something that awakens people to some part of themselves that makes them more compassionate and really want to change the world in a better way. And there's few and far between, there's really nothing gets presented to me that way. It's like, it can't all be, sort of gangs and murder and drug overdoses. It's just hard to be a party to that. Especially when I started in the industry, when I started watching TV as a kid, there was like one channel for like 3 hours a day. Like, it can't even make that much impact, really. And then you reach, by the time my career was around, there could have been like maybe, 7 or 8, 9 channels maybe, back in the 70s. And then now there's just thousands. But how many times do you have, like, you could have 1,000 channels and you'll actually flick through going, there's nothing on TV. There's just nothing on. And you're like, that's just so bad. It's kind of just like feeding us candy. And there's just no nutrition there for us. So there's just an empty feeling when you're sometimes watching some of these things.
Yes. And it's so very true. I think that as you get older as an actor, we're challenged with wanting to stay connected to the magic of acting, to the childlike, playful aspects, and there's something I love to do, and I love to teach mask work because it's, as you were talking about earlier, and this is segueing into my next question, it's about getting into the skin of another. That's what it is for me. It's, you put on a face, and what does that face tell you? But how did you, Tonya, how did you create truth in your characters? Did you have something that you learned through your studies, or did it just come to you as you were working, to find in the characters that you played, like a through line of truth? Or did you have a secret, or did you have some method that helped get you to the truth of the character?
Yeah, I love this question. Um, I am an empathic. I have
Mhm.
that became before an actor. I was an only child, and I think when you're an only child, you live in an adult world more because you don't have those siblings sort of around. And I always found myself as a small child, just I could feel other people. I felt sort of their sadness. Um, Most of the people that I became friends with were people that other people didn't want to be friends with. My feeling for them, my mother would say always, like even from kindergarten, I pick out the one girl that nobody, wanted to play with or be with. That is just something that's I feel for that person, and I want to make that person feel loved and belonging and heard. It's just part of my nature. And so acting was just a way of triggering that. But I love what you just said about the truth. For a long time, I felt that's what I was doing as an actor. I felt like I was finding the truth in these characters. But then after a few decades, it didn't feel like that anymore because there's I don't even, media itself, the stories we tell, the shows that we do create a false truth. And it's the opposite. I feel like it's not that I'm pulling from society's truth and flowing those into the character. It feels different. It feels like that as media, we are telling an audience what truth looks like, what it feels like. And I think me stepping away from Y&R was that realization. It's that we were telling them, when you're angry, this is what anger looks like. When you're sad, this is what sadness looks like. And I was watching people not react truthfully, like people themselves were not having true moments. I think they were trying to copy moments that they were watching on screen. And I realized the danger that this tool, that this media, the screen that we have is, I was somewhere and I heard like a gunshot, but it didn't sound like in a movie gunshot. So I didn't think it was a gunshot. And so those kind of things would trigger me, where I would go, wow, if this was a movie, this would be it. If someone is upset over the death or a divorce, there's we exaggerate that feeling. So in the real world, I think they don't think it's real for them because it's not as big as maybe it was on a show. And these conflicting things were becoming a struggle for me. So when I would do a scene and try to find more truth in it, you'd find the director going, give me more, give me more. And the give me more is because we've been taught that this is what real emotion looks like. Maybe when someone's dead, you're numb. Maybe you don't actually feel any reaction to that person's death for 6 months or a year, and then it hits you. In the movie, we don't have 6 months to a year. So that emotion you might have had a year later, you have like 5 minutes later, but maybe that's not the real, how it is. Maybe there are people who go through a divorce and there's a sadness, but maybe there's a relief, and maybe they're not, tearing his clothes up and burning them and throwing them off a balcony. And we just seem to exaggerate. And then what made it worse was then reality shows just created an exaggeration on the exaggeration. So I feel this heightened sense of craziness on our planet are really people that don't know what to do with their actual real feelings, that I think they don't feel they're true enough until they've blown them up and made them as huge as TV shows and dramas, that romance is not romance if it's not as huge and big as it is. And so that's me taking a step back from that and trying to understand, how do we move forward? How do we get the truth back?
Mm.
Because I do believe that our industry has been manipulating the public for a long time, and not always in positive ways. Like pretty much every single show that you watch, cop shows, medical shows, everyone ends up in romance, which
Mhm.
in the real life is not happening. In real life,
Really?
cops are, they're male and female cops, and they're not all jumping into bed together. They're doctors that are male and female, nurses that are male and female. They're not all jumping into bed together. And I'm wondering if they're jumping into bed together because TV shows show them all jumping in bed together. But I can tell by the way people flirt with me in real life,
Yeah.
that they're extending that fantasy. Like
Yeah.
I'm at the car wash getting my car washed. Like, really, is this a situation where you should be flirt? Like, I don't know. I just remember being a kid. There were lines of boundaries that I feel people didn't cross, and now I feel there's no line, because the media has created the sense of there is no line or boundary sort of for anything. I do feel less safe going out, because I mean, these stories you hear, like if somebody cuts somebody off in traffic, it's like they're ready to shoot the other person. I'm like, how is that a normal response? Like, someone cuts you off in traffic, you decide, I'm going to pull out my gun, but you happen to be carrying a gun around to begin with, and shoot them because they cut me off in traffic. I just really think that we have done some damage. There's a lot of physical abuse of women, and I think a lot of TV shows have shown, women taking a punch like a guy and punching back and giving is good. But these are fantasies. These are not the chances that a 100-pound woman is really going to take on a 350 linebacker looking guy and blow for blow. It's just not any kind of reality. And I thought, well, this is just entertainment. Nobody's believing this. But I would meet people who really thought I was a doctor, who really thought that was my son, and I think it shocked me more that, because I look at things in TV as this is just entertainment. But I think it shocked me that people were believing these things.
In the illusion.
And the illusion of it. So they'll, some guy will knock a woman down because she's supposed to bounce right back up, but she's out cold flat, because that's the reality of life. But so I am struggling with that.
But between the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, do you feel that things are progressively getting better, or do you feel that there's like we're still stuck in something?
I don't feel we're getting better. I feel we're talking about it, but what is really actually happening? I think, like if I meet someone who's a racist, they don't have to say racist things for me to know they're still a racist. Right. So basically, we now have laws saying that they can't say these things to me, but that doesn't mean they can't make my life a living hell. And in the same way in the Me Too movement, it doesn't mean that men are still not going to make women's lives a living hell just because they're legislated that they can't say certain things or do certain things. But I've always been a bit of a cynic, so maybe that's more from that perspective. But I believe it's my responsibility to protect myself. I don't live in the illusion that governments or changes outside of me are there to protect me. I always live in the sense of I need to be cognizant at all times to be protecting myself from whatever the situation might be. So, but I've been like that since a little kid. I'm always a suspicious little kid, I always think the worst of people because I'm just always prepared for whatever craziness someone might do. But yeah, definitely, when I say media, I also mean like video games. Like I just believe even women's images about their own bodies, their concept of how they should look or what beauty. looks like, and weight that they should be, or the way their hair should look, or the makeup they should wear, or the clothes that they need to. That's still telling me that we really haven't gone that far. We haven't changed that much, because people are still obsessed about that. Because even when the character is overweight, they make such a focus about she's overweight. So it's not like it's a natural thing, it's like she's dealing with that. And for a long time, Black characters, let's say, were written where it was like everything was about their race. Like, that's not how you live as a Black person. Things are racist, things are happening, but you don't stand there sort of focused on all of that. You move forward. You just have to move forward as best as you can. You have other things to worry about, your health and the environment and, relationships and your kids being healthy. There's lots of things. So they're not writing all these characters very three-dimensional. They're still very one-dimensional, and a lot of the characters are still written from the perspective of a cis white man. Like they're still whatever those illusions are. I feel like the rest of the industry is created around the illusions of that audience.
So well said. And I feel like you are a woman that's done so much in her life so far. You've been an advocate for things. You've gone to Rwanda. You feel, and you said this one thing to me once about this need to serve. With all of the things you've done, if there was a young Tonya looking at you today, or a young actress of color or Indigenous person who is striving to get out there and do something with their career, like, with all the experience you have, if you could suggest something that they could do in order to reach success, that's a charged word, but reach success in their career, what suggestion would you offer them?
Well, I think it would be good for them to focus in a two-pronged way. There is the artistic, creative side of yourself that you always need to be working at. And there's the business aspect of the industry that we're in that you always need to be aware of and learning and training to understand. And those two things somehow need to merge together. And you need to give both equal attention for success. But you first also have to sit down and write out what success looks like to you. There's no one agenda of success. Success for every single person in this industry is not winning Oscars, getting paid $40 million a movie, living in Hollywood. There's a very flat, two-dimensional aspect to what people think success might be in this industry. I think people need to really write it down. What does that feel like? What does that look like to them? One of the things that I wish I thought about more when I was starting in the industry was the loss of privacy, the dealing with the public and fans and their expectation of you. I think that's something we don't normally talk about a lot. And there's certainly no training in schools that about this, but it's very difficult for some. I'm more of an introvert and very much of a sort of a internal thinker about things. And when people are coming at me all the time, it's like an overload. I'm not even present anymore. I'm just moving through a sea of overwhelming things that are coming at me. And so I have found that I'm more reclusive on my own, because that's the only time I can recharge is on my own. Because if I go out, and if someone it just happened recently again. What was that? I think it was like at a doctor's appointment, I went to get some headshots. I hadn't done it in like 7 years. It was like the last headshots. And I thought, oh my God, I'm regurgitating these same 7, these pictures. But the photographer had, I guess, looked me up online, which is so invasive that people can look you up online before they meet you. I just never think of doing those things. And then I got there and he's like, oh, you were on this soap. And yeah, I know one of the actors who's on that soap. And I haven't been on the show for almost 15 years or so. But he was talking like I was in it right now. And whatever happened to this person? And then he asked me what area I lived in. And I I said the area and then I said the street. And then he goes, oh my God, I used to live on that street. Oh, let me see, what celebrities can I remember on that street? And I was just sitting there going, this is so overwhelming for me right now that, and it was funny, he was taking the photos and he actually said, people say, when I talk this much because, it makes people feel comfortable. I go, you don't have to talk that much because I actually tune you out while I'm taking these photos because it's just too much. But yeah, I think people need to think about that. Is that something in your life that you want? Some people do want it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to really think about it. Everything about your children, everything about your life becomes fodder for entertainment, and it's very difficult on some personalities, and other people, soak it up. So you have to know who you are so that you can better understand what kind of a career, what kind of a industry, how is it you want to shape. You don't be a victim of this industry. Like, you're an empowered person in this industry, but you have decisions you can make, and you can use the word no. You can say, I don't want to be in that show. I don't want to play that character. That's not an agent I want to be with. There are things you can say. You don't ever feel like I just have to say yes to all these things and this is the silliest thing, because no other opportunity will come along for me is not a realistic concept.
So many actors think that way, but
the
it's
entire
amazing.
Universe is recycling all the time. It's passing, even just from an astrological point of view, the stars all move in rotation. Everything circles around again. Why your particular journey would be one way
Cut. Void.
Makes absolutely no sense. So I've had thousands and thousands of opportunities. I feel like they come daily, and there's no sense of reality. That it's like thinking that's the one love of your life. It's like that's the one job you'll ever get. That's the one there. It's just not real. Maybe in a TV show or movie they make it that way because it gives it more, edge on the edge of your seat. But in real life, it's just not that way at all. You're going to have lots of opportunities.
And actors today, we have to deal with self-taping and self-taping and self-taping. And boy, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But, many actors are getting very good at it now because after the pandemic, we've had kind of no choice.
Yeah.
But
I'm not as involved in acting now. So I feel I will again, but I don't have that drive or desire in the same way that I did. And I really feel it's that I don't think I didn't set out to become an actor. So that wasn't just the only journey of my life, but I'm always setting out to understand humanity and understand human condition and understand why people still do the things that they do. So that'll never change. So it might form into something else that I don't even know of right now. I think it's why I find running Reelworld so rewarding, because I have more of an interest now in the people that are creating those stories. And how do I help shape their ideas? Because sometimes a lot of emerging filmmakers come to me at Reelworld and they're like telling me, that story that is so unique, which is never unique.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. The same story over and over and over, and I'll go, there's got to be a better, like, why are you telling this particular story? And they're really telling it because everyone else is telling it.
Right.
And I go, there's got to be something very unique about the way you see the world, about something that has happened to you that is so true to you that you can tell in a story. In a country filled with millions of immigrants, every story can't be the story of how the immigrant got to Canada. Like, it's just, how about the immigrant finds, undrinkable water and like come up with something else rather than just the constant struggle of the immigrant, because I feel those stories just constantly create a victim story all the time. And it's my pet peeve. I really believe that none of us are victims, like in any capacity, in any shape. And then it always starts this conversation about, what about when this happens? What about, no, in any shape or form.
So
you are party to whatever is happening in your life, and you have more control than you think you have, and you can shift and
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
Um, there's been even experiments where people have prayed over water and the
Mhm.
molecules have changed. You have such, each one of us, we have such immense power that we don't know we have this power. And when you set your intention, and it is an intention that you just didn't pull out of the sky, you can feel it in yourself. Your body literally vibrates to that. There is no
It's
way you're not going to succeed or achieve that
yes.
thing.
Yes, and you are talking probably about something that so many people are resonating with today. I know I am. I talk to my students all about that stuff, that Dr. Emoto's water experiment, and that water has consciousness and water has history. And it's so fascinating because we are more than we admit, like that we know
Yeah.
consciously. I mean,
And
we are
things are
we're
happening to us. I mean,
yeah.
so many times I'm thinking about, I'm trying to like remember a certain movie, whatever, and I'll turn on the TV and that movie happens to be playing like at that moment. Or I'm thinking
Yeah.
about someone and they shoot me an email and I've not talked to them in 5 years. Those
Yes.
are the things I'm talking about. Like
Yes.
if you can just quiet the noise,
Yes.
there is
Yes.
a higher power that is guiding you, but
Yes.
we are willful little creatures,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we sometimes decide this is what we want no matter what. But if
Mhm.
you're not getting there, it's not because the rest of the world is stopping you from getting there. It's not your journey,
Mhm.
and deep in your heart, it's not your journey. Deep in your heart, it's not what
Mhm.
you really want. You've just
Mhm.
seen it out there as an illusion and it's a fantasy that you think you want. But if you were really truthful, there's something else in there that you have a burning desire to do. And that's the thing you should do, even if everyone thinks you're crazy.
Yeah, well, someone like you is very inspiring to people that are starting out because you're the epiphany of we are creators first and foremost. Yes, I had an amazing acting career, but I also felt that I needed to bring something of value forward to communities and to people that needed it. And so many of them today are having enriching lives because of it. And I'd like the audience to hear a little bit more about that, the Real World Festival. And if they wanted to know more about that, where and how could they contact you? What does your festival offer them? Could you give us a little resume on that? Because it's so
Oh, absolutely.
fantastic.
And for them to go to reelworld.ca, REEL, reelworld.ca, and to really the organization is many organizations that I've formed. So it's Real World Screen Institute. And under Real World Screen Institute, we have a number of programs. The festival is one of them. And all our programs are wrapped around Canadian, Black, Indigenous, Asian, South Asian, people of color. And it's to try and show stories that are not your stereotypical sort of stories, to try and open up people's minds, but also the training aspect of what we do at Real World, the advocacy work that we do, trying to open up more access for people to get funding, um, access people to get more training and professional development, to be able to network. I mean, that's a key part of the business part, that I was talking about. And then finding people that can inspire and help people get those creative juices going. Sometimes when you're not as exposed to the industry, you think, oh, I want to be an actor. That's sometimes because that's the only thing you know. But you might want to be, I don't know, an animator, somebody who works in animation. You might want to do more voice work. You might want to
Mhm.
be a casting director. You might want to be a manager. You might want to be an agent to somebody. Um, our industry is so vast. It's a, it's a, it's not, it's bigger than a village. It's an anxiety to it, and every piece is vital. Like, not the whole thing doesn't come together if one piece is missing. Try doing anything without a cinematographer, or try doing it without crew and electrical and carpentry, and try not having any catering on set, or a
What?
wardrobe person, or a makeup artist, or a hair person. Like, all these are valuable. And I think because someone might go, oh, I want to be in the industry, I think their first thought is actor. And then the second one, or might, for some, the first one might director. but there are hundreds of jobs. And I think you just want to leave yourself open to, I don't believe you should set your intention that way, by the way, just to say, I want to be an actor, I want to be a director. It should be more, I want to be able to communicate or be part of a movement that changes the way people think about certain things. I think that's a better intention. And however that happens is what you should be happy about. I want to bring the world together. I want to create, less violence against women. I want to create, that everyone should have food and have a roof over their head and have, make those intentions stronger. And then those jobs come along. I mean, acting is, it's a craft. It's not really, it's not a mandate and a mission of your life. It's just one of the tools that you can use for that mandate and mission. But had I not been an actor, I would have done the same things through music. I would have done the same things through maybe writing. I would have done the same things. So I had no attachment to whatever that tool was that I used. So make sure your intention is not just a tool. Nobody says, I want to be a hammer. It's like, so these careers to me are just the tools. But what are you trying to achieve with that tool? And that's someone like a Fabienne Colles, she's not saying, I want, it's not one tool. It is an entire foundation wrapped around a cause and a mission and a statement that is a movement. And she herself has performed and she has done other things, but all those are just different tools. So I'm more interested in young people that come up to me with that kind of intention rather than just saying, I want to be an actor. Because the next question from someone like me would be, why? What is your reason? And you need to have a good answer for that for yourself.
Wow. Boy, oh boy, I could just go on and on and on and listen. And it's just so inspiring. Everything you say resonates. And I've really appreciated this time. Tonya, thank you so much. Thank you for your truth, your honesty, your inspiration to so many and more that will now discover you through this. I want to also take a moment to thank our coordinator, Andrea Este, who's been helping us here in the background because, like Tonya said earlier, it takes a team. So thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you to the Montreal International Black Film Festival and the Fabienne Colles Foundation. She's also someone who's extremely inspiring, as is Joyce Fuerza, who just came out with her own short film that's winning awards. So yes, we are so much more than we know, but we are creators first. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind here after today's discussion. Hope to see you again, hope to speak to you again, and keep doing the great work you are doing. Tonya,
thank you.
Thank you.
It was really a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for having me.
Have a great one. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great festival, everyone.